Their four walls, the corners of their rooms, the doorway they walk through without thinking, the chair where fading light falls. Across the floor, the Lord is no mere guest who slips out when the lamps go dark. Where his people are, his presence settles in for the long stay. That is why coming home most days feels like a deep exhale. That is why, even when there is conflict inside those rooms, something deeper still holds them close. The walls are more than walls. They have been blessed quietly, without fanfare, without anyone in the home having to earn it, because those inside belong to him, and where his beloved lives, his tender care remains. The same is true for the people who share that home with them, those whose familiar footsteps they know well, those who learned their moods and stopped mentioning them at all. Some of them are difficult, he knows. Some have hurt them in ways they have not finished forgiving. The boundary still holds for them, because the boundary is for the whole household. And that household includes the difficult ones. He is not asking them to pretend the struggle is not real. He is asking them to notice that even the difficult ones are being shaped slowly by their nearness to a place he has keeping. When the line was drawn around them, it was drawn wide. He did not measure it to the scale of your loneliness. He shaped it to the measure of the love you would one day carry. So it opened wide for people you had not yet met, the faces that would matter to you, lighter, the souls you would learn to pray for. That boundary was generous from the beginning, and it still is. You have spent seasons feeling like you stood alone inside a tiny circle. That circle was never small. You simply had not learned how far it reached, and his boundary reaches backward as well as outward. Some of you carry a sense that protection was for other people, that the keeping skipped your house, your family, your line. Look again. The fact that you are here, listening now, capable of longing for something better, is proof itself that his keeping did not skip you. You survived seasons that should have ended you. You walked through rooms that broke other souls. You are not the exception to his promise. You are a living line of it still being written. There is something you must understand about how the Lord works, because it has been the root of so much of your confusion. Dramatic rescue is not the only kind of deliverance. It is only a fraction of it. Most of what he does for you, you will never see. Invisible rescue is a tiny fraction of the work. The rest is silent. It looks like nothing is happening. It looks like a quiet afternoon. It is the storm that never gathered, the meeting that did not go wrong, the text that was never sent, the hand raised against you, but lowered before it struck. If he showed you all of it at once, you would not have room for that much. Grazie. So he keeps most of it. And one day you will see it all, and you will realize why you spent so many years afraid of nothing. Let us read a passage together now. It is not a secret just for you. A line that was written a very long time ago, preserved for weary souls who were sure they stood unprotected. An ancient worship song rose up the hills of Jerusalem, sung by ordinary folks walking toward a place they hoped was safe. They looked up at the hills around them and the dangers they might hide. They were not scholars, just simple travelers who knew the feeling of being tiny under a vast sky, miles from home, unsure of what waited in those hills. And on that climb, facing the raw fear of the open road, this timeless promise was written for them, and it is written for you with the exact same ink. This is what was written. Psalm 121, verses 7 and 8. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over their coming and their going, both now and forevermore. Read this slowly. He will keep them. Not he might. Not only if their faith is impressive enough today. He will keep. Then notice the reach of it, the part fear always skips over. Their coming and their going, both directions. The road they walk out on and the road they walk home on is covered by his hand. This is not a promise of a flat and painless road. It is a promise that the one who walks it has measured it, and that what is being kept is their life, their very self, not merely their circumstances. Read that small word near the end too. Forevermore. The keeping does not run out when this season ends. It does not rise and fall with the weather of their mood or the strength of their grip. It was settled. It is the kind of promise his Son sealed when he stood in their place, so that their belonging would never again rest on their performance. The wall is not their effort. The wall is his will, and his will toward them is steady, and his will toward them is good. Notice what the promise does not say, because that matters too. It does not say they will be spared every hard road. It does not promise a life without grief, or struggle, or loss. It promises keeping. There is a difference between a hard road and an abandoned one, and the psalm knows it. A difficult day is not a breach in the of view's wall. It is a feature of walking through a world that is still being healed. What he promises them is not a flat path. He promises that the path at every turn has already been walked by the one who keeps them, and that what reaches them has passed through his hands first. So when the hard day comes, and it will, they must not read it as proof that his keeping failed. They should read it as the thing the promise was made for. The promise was never for the easy seasons when they rarely think of him. It was written for the climb, for the open road, for the traveler under the wide sky, unsure of what waits in the hills. It was written for the version of them who is tired and unsure and quietly afraid. That is exactly who he wrote it for, not the theologians, the tired ones. Now they look back at what he said at the beginning. A foundation has been holding under their feet that they never learned to feel. Here is the answer. The whole message was walking toward. The reason their heart keeps reading the prake, silence, as exposure, is that no one ever taught them to recognize the sound of a wall that has not been breached. The silence was never the absence of a guard. The quiet itself was the guard awake, with no need to shout. They were never left unprotected for 1 hour. They stood firm on a promise kept, written in a promise older than their enemies and older than their fears. If this message reaches the weary soul that has been too afraid to set down the watch, and they want a small way to mark this, the moment they can write kept below, and while they are there, they will find 7 letters waiting in the pinned comment above, 1 for each of the next 7 mornings they receive. Some of what they filed under failure was his hand holding, a door that closed in their face, a relationship that never quite began, an opportunity that slipped past their hands and left them with nothing to point at. They read those events as rejection. He asks them to read them again, gently. He isn't romanticizing their pain. The losses they carry are real losses, and he has grieved them beside them. But not every loss was a wound. Some were a rescue that looked from where they were standing, like the opposite of a rescue. They were too close to him to be allowed to keep what wasn't for them. They might ask with a grief he doesn't dismiss, why he did not simply explain it at the time. The honest answer is that the explanation would have undone the guarding. If the Lord told them in that moment that he was clearing an obstacle out of their path, they would have argued. They would have begged him to leave it. They would have held tighter than was wise. So he did the work without an explanation, and he asked them to trust without seeing. This trust without seeing is the very thing that lets him work. There are trials that never happen to them, that they will never learn about in this life, a sickness they never caught, an accident they were not in, a wrong turn they almost took and did not, because something inside them that they did not recognize as him said, wait. He has often been that hesitation, the split second of reluctance that put them in a different lane, the small unwillingness that kept the message in their drafts instead of sending it. the quiet pull that made them turn around and go back into the house. None of those moments looked like rescues. Many of them were. They filed them under nothing happened, and nothing happening was the answer. One day, on the far side of this life, they will be shown the parts of their story he kept from them for their own sake. They will see the harm that came close and did not land. They will see the mornings they woke, unaware that they had been spared something in the night, and he does not think they will weep from sorrow. The Lord says they will weep from the blank to sheer scale of a love they only ever saw in pieces. He gently prepares them to be able to receive such vast grace without breaking. His way of preparing them is teaching them to notice the quiet protection right now, the ordinary safeguards, the peaceful quiet days. They practice noticing them. It becomes easier. The eye that learns to read small mercies will be ready in the end to witness their full glory. The heavy strain comes from believing their safety depends on themselves, the ache of pretending to be their own guardian, the exhaustion of scanning the horizon for threats they are sure are coming. He is lifting that burden off their shoulders, not because they finally learned to pray perfectly, because that watch was never theirs to keep. The keeper of their life never grows weary. He needs no second pair of eyes that still must blink. Their blinking has kept them wide awake for years at a duty he never assigned them. They can step down, they can sit, they can hand the watching back to the one who never sleeps. He names their old habit without shame, because they have carried it long enough. They scan the headlines looking for proof that the world is closing in. They reopen old wounds to check whether they have shifted shape since the last time they checked. They reread the messages, hunting for evidence that they are about to be abandoned. They do this because at some point they decided that vigilance was the same as love, that if they ever stopped scanning, the disaster would be their fault. The Lord knows where that habit started. He is not blaming them for it. He only asks them to see what it has been costing them and what it has been costing him, because every hour they spend doing the work he never gave them is an hour he cannot spend giving them the rest he bought for them. He also wants to address the fear that came down to them through their family, because it lives in the bones of some of them, and they did not put it there themselves. They inherited the worry that ran through their mother. They inherited the tension that ran through their father. They inherited a readiness for impact that ran through people whose specific stories they will never know. That inheritance is not the final word over them. The foundation under their feet runs deeper than the fear that was handed down. What was passed to them can stop with them. They may be the first in their line to live on bedrock with their eyes wide open, and the ones who come after them, whether by blood or by love, will inherit a different default. They will inherit the quiet assumption of safety because they learn to live inside one. So here is something small they can carry into the rest of their week. When the fear comes back, and it will visit, they must not argue with it. They should not lecture it. Just point quietly to the promise, whispering it under their breath, low enough that only the Lord can hear. His keeping still holds. They might not feel different the 10th time they do it, but somewhere around the 30th time they will notice things they never expected. They reach for the locks less often. They look up from worst-case scenarios a bit sooner. Their day begins with something other than dread. The eye that learns to see what is quietly kept is being made ready to see the whole. They do not have to get this perfect. That is part of the relief, too. What holds them is not a fragile thing. They might break by doubting on a hard afternoon. Doubt it, and it holds. Forget it for a week, and it holds. Return to it embarrassed at how long they stayed away, and they will find it exactly where it was, unmoved, with their name still on the inside of the line. A foundation does not flinch when the plank, one standing on it, trembles. It was made to be steady, precisely so. that they would not have to be. They should carry one picture too, because images stay when arguments leave. He imagines a field at dusk. It was worked all day, now it is resting. A simple fence stands around it. Not tall, not dramatic, just enough to separate the inside from what lies outside. The barrier stood long before the prost field was planted. It will still be, standing long after this season has passed. Inside the fence things grow, outside things move past. Most of what he fears is not coming for him. It only passes through the larger field of the world, close enough to frighten him but not aimed at him. Not all pain is kept from him, but nothing reaches his deepest soul. Outside of his knowledge, his mercy, and his final authority, the fence is not built by his effort. It rests on a promise that was written before he was born. He holds that image when noise starts. The enemy of his peace is loud, but loud is not the same as strong. Noise is not authority. A threat is not an outcome. The voice screaming at him in the quiet hours only claims what it wishes were true, not what is true. What is true was settled by his promise, and that promise has not been revoked. His name is on the inside of the boundary. The boundary holds. He lets the noise be noise. It cannot cross a line it didn't draw, or ever move. He rests inside the fence. Growth is happening within them. What is passing is what they have mistaken for a threat. When fear creeps back, they must place their mind inside that quiet edge of the field and realize the silence is not because nothing is happening. The quiet is because what is happening to them differs from what is passing them by. That difference is the ultimate gift. That difference is his care, made small enough to hold in a single snapshot. Trust in the end is not a feeling that arrives to settle their anxious heart. Trust is a decision to stop trying to watch for him. It is the willingness to live inside a care they cannot inspect, to live their day without constantly auditing the perimeter every hour. That boundary is not theirs to audit. It is his to maintain. And while they have been straining to inspect it, they have been missing the very thing it was built to give them, which is the freedom to actually live. They must live, doing the next ordinary thing without checking the perimeter, making the call they have delayed, eating the meal before them slowly, speaking gently to the person they live with, writing the message they owe someone, showing up where they promised to show up. None of those acts are small. All of it is the life he has been protecting, and that life is the point. Protection exists so that actual living can happen. One must not waste his keeping by withholding their life. And on days when old fears come roaring back, when the protective wall feels invisible and divine silence feels like a final verdict, they must not argue their way out. They simply return to the written line. For the climb, they point to it standing firm, letting it hold the weight their own. Reasoning was never strong enough to hold. His keeping does not require their belief to function, but their faith is how they finally come to rest inside it. A believer was not made to spend their life bracing. They were made to dwell secure on something that does not move. His keeping holds. Their trembling did not weaken it. Their forgetting did not cancel it. The years they walked away did not erase it. The losses they grieved did not reach past it. It was laid before they arrived. It has not been redrawn since, and it will stand at the edge of every road still ahead of them. Amen. If this devotional gave a weary heart room to breathe, they should stay and subscribe so the next reflection can find them. There are 7 free letters waiting in the pinned comment below, one for each of the next 7 mornings. Receive them. Share this with someone whose safety they have been deeply anxious about, and letting the promise do its quiet work. Peace over their home, and along the path stretched before him, which the Lord has already measured.